Marseille college student Fatima Saya and her boyfriend Mehdi boarded the metro. They were supposed to get off at different stations. Mehdi was going to the hospital to see his mother. Fatima was going to work, or rather, to earn extra money. The night before, a woman called her about an ad that Fatima had posted on a website. Like many students, she had a part-time job. In the ad, Fatima wrote that she provided babysitting services in the evening. The meeting was scheduled at the entrance to the Malplaisir metro station. Having said goodbye to her boyfriend until the evening, Fatima went to the stations she needed. It is worth noting that Mehdi offered to go to a meeting with a client together, but Fatima told him that she would go to the meeting alone, since Mehdi looked unpresentable that day. She promised that she would stay with the client's child for a few hours and that they would definitely meet in the evening. Mehdi saw his beloved in the metro car for the last time. At 6 p.m., Mehdi received a strange text message from his girlfriend. Fatima wrote that she accidentally ran into an old acquaintance and decided to sit with her in a cafe. Therefore, they would not be able to meet in the evening. Mehdi paid attention to the style of writing. He was especially surprised by the last word. In the text, she called him baby. Fatima had never called him that before. The strangest thing about this message was something else. Fatima and Mehdi almost always communicated with each other via voice messages if there was no opportunity to call. Text messages were used extremely rarely. He tried to call his girlfriend several times, but the girl's phone was turned off. Fatima lived with her parents. She never returned home that evening. The parents sounded the alarm, called Mehdi, but he himself did not know what to answer them. He only said that he was going to look for her. And indeed, that evening, Mehdi went to the Malplaisir station. He walked along the street for several hours, asking passers-by. None of the respondents had seen the girl. The next day, Mehdi and Fatima's mother filed a police report. The missing girl's mother convinced the police that something irreparable had happened to her daughter. Fatima was a responsible person. She could not have just left home. The police accepted the missing persons report. Having found out the circumstances of the girl's disappearance from Migdi, the investigators began questioning possible witnesses. Thus, it was possible to establish that, on the afternoon of May 6th, an unknown woman called Fatima's mobile phone, introducing herself as an acquaintance of a man who was urgently looking for a nanny for his child for the evening. According to Fatima's friends, the student wrote down the unknown person's phone number on a piece of paper and put it in her pocket. The investigators questioned Mehdi. The young man explained to the police that he had last seen his girlfriend at the Malplaisir station. He himself rode the metro further and visited his mother, who was in the hospital. We would like to draw your attention to the fact that the parents had a hard time accepting their daughter's choice. They did not trust Mehdi very much, so the mother of the missing woman asked the investigators to study the young man's testimony more carefully. The investigators listened to the woman's words. Mehdi's testimony was checked immediately, and indeed, the cameras installed at the metro station recorded how Mehdi and Fatima got on the metro together at the same station. At the Malplaisir station, the girl got off the metro car alone, without the young man's accompaniment. Mehdi rode the metro a couple more stops. While the police were taking measures to find the missing woman, Mehdi began his own search. He printed out leaflets with the missing woman's picture and posted them around the city center. He also involved his friends in the search, and so it was possible to establish that Fatima left the metro at 15:04. She went to meet the man at the woman's request. At 1700, she sent 5 text messages, including a message in which she wrote about meeting a friend. Then, a phone call was made from her number to the auto repair shop. It lasted 2 seconds, Considering that Fatima never had a personal car, the call seemed strange to the investigators. At 1842, the phone was disconnected. The investigators sent a request to the telephone company. According to the response received, the unknown person called from a payphone located in the 13th district. In other words, the caller did not want her location to be identified. The kidnapping of the girl was planned. Unfortunately, there were no street surveillance cameras installed near the payphone from which the unknown person called. The investigation reached a dead end. A week of fruitless searching passed. The investigators decided to take a closer look at the family of the missing girl, as well as her social circle. The family turned out to be quite ordinary. Conflicts were rare. Fatima studied well in college. Her classmates described the girl from a positive side. The students' parents showed the investigators their daughter's room. The police officers hoped to find diaries or individual notes in the room. They were looking for evidence of the missing person's contacts with people unknown to her parents or friends, but the search yielded no results. Meanwhile, Mehdi continued his search. Soon, his desperate attempts to find his beloved became known to the local media. Journalists decided to support the young man. They helped him organize a march along the central streets of Marseille in support of the search operation. In this way, they attracted a large number of caring people. For several weeks, the police department received calls from city residents. People reported that they had seen a similar girl in supermarkets, markets, and cinemas. There were also calls from outside France. Each call was carefully checked. But, in all cases, the information was not confirmed. On May 15th, a local resident, Susie Giles, came to the police station. She told about an incident that occurred on May 6th at the St. Charles train station. St. Charles is the main railway and intercity bus station in Marseille. Susie said that on May 6th, a man approached her at the station and asked her to do him a favor. He asked Susie to call several numbers from a payphone and handed her a piece of paper with a list of numbers. The man explained that he was looking for a nanny for his child for the evening. Susie was supposed to call the numbers and introduce herself as his wife, say that she was looking for a nanny, and ask the girls to sit with the child. In the conversation, she was supposed to indicate that the nanny would be met by her husband at the Malplaisir metro station. The idea of calling seemed strange to Susie. She asked the man why his wife did not call the ads herself. The man answered with an unperturbed look that he wanted to surprise his wife. Take her to an expensive restaurant. He himself was afraid to call the ads so as not to arouse mistrust among potential nannies. This answer seemed quite convincing to Susie, and she agreed to call 4 numbers. No one answered the first 2 numbers. The woman answered the 3rd number that she was busy on the evening of May 7th. Fatima agreed to meet him halfway. Her number was the 4th on this list. The man paid Susie €5 for the service. As soon as she heard the news on TV about the missing Fatima, she immediately remembered this incident. Susie described the stranger. The man was of average build, looked to be between 45 and 50 years old, was about 170 to 175 centimeters tall, and wore glasses with small diopters. It is possible that these were even ordinary glasses that he wore for image. Investigators raised a database of people previously prosecuted for kidnapping, as well as for a crime against sexual inviolability. Susie carefully examined the photographs and stated that there were no photographs of the person she was talking about. Based on Susie's words, a composite sketch of the man was made. The composite sketch was broadcast on local TV channels and also printed in local newspapers. The actions of the police made the criminal nervous. 3 days later, on May 18th, Susie Giles called the police. The woman was very scared. Susie said that she was calling from a bar. She had just spoken to the person the police were looking for. That same man found her in the bar and asked her for a long time about her visit to the police. He asked about the details of the conversation with the investigators. The stranger tried for a long time to persuade her to leave the bar and go for a walk. He even offered her a job. But Susie understood the danger of the situation, so she did not agree to leave the bar. Investigators immediately went to the specified establishment, but the man was no longer in the bar. They decided to check the recordings of the surveillance cameras installed in the bar. To their deep disappointment, the cameras turned out to be faulty. Susie was put under operational surveillance. Investigators were afraid that the alleged criminal would want to deal with the witness. A few days later, the police department received another important call. A high school student, whose name was not disclosed in the interests of the investigation, reported that a man similar to the photo fit gave her a ride in April. The student was late for the bus going to the stop near the school. She caught a ride and asked to take her to school. She remembered this trip because the driver persistently asked her for her phone number. He offered her a job. The high school student was scared, but she did not give the driver her phone number. She convinced him that it would be better if he wrote her an email. The man introduced himself as Olen Cortés. Soon she received an email in which Olen asked the high school student to meet him at the bus stop in front of the bus station. The girl did the right thing. She did not go along with it. The high school student added that the man was pleasant in appearance, but his gaze was very heavy. The high school student's story made the investigators think. It seems that Fatima could not have been the only victim of the wanted man. Let's return to the story of Susie Gilles. Investigators were able to establish that Susie, at the request of the alleged criminal, called women on May 6th who posted their ad on the same website as Fatima. In other words, Fatima was not the specific target of the criminal. The girl most likely became his random victim. The other women were just lucky. Experts found that the profiles of all 4 applicants were viewed several days before the kidnapping from 29 different IP addresses. One address in particular attracted attention. A large number of profiles were viewed in an internet café on Rue de Canebière in Marseille. Investigators went to the internet café. Upon arrival, a visitor log was requested, but to the great disappointment of the investigators, such a log was not kept in the café. It was also possible to establish that the unknown person sent the high school students emails from this internet café. The criminal was very smart. He did everything to make it impossible to identify him. Frankly speaking, the investigators no longer hoped to solve this case. Fatima's body was never found. The investigators doubted that the girl could still be alive. Several months had passed since Fatima's disappearance. On October 8th, 2 women came to the Marseille police station. They reported that their friend, 42-year-old Irina Sitnik, had disappeared on October 5th. Irina was a native of the former USSR. She, like her friends, was a street prostitute. On the night of October 5th to 6th, she was picked up by a client in a white car. No one has seen Irina since. The police accepted the statement. 2.5 weeks later, on October 22nd, another representative of the oldest profession also mysteriously disappears. 23-year-old Cristina Bulea, a citizen of Romania, worked on the street in the Prado area near the metro station. She was last seen getting into a client's car. The car was white, just like in Irina's case. The cases of missing women had common features. The missing persons had Slavic appearance, disappeared under similar circumstances. Operational searches for the missing persons yielded no results. 2 weeks later, on November 7th, 28-year-old Zinep Chebut, a citizen of Algeria, disappeared. Zinep's disappearance was reported to the police by her mother on November 9th. The mother reported that her daughter left the apartment on November 7th at 8:30 in the evening. Zineb was engaged in prostitution. The mother of the missing woman assured the investigators that she did not know about this. Investigators established that on the evening of November 7th, Zineb called a friend and explained in Arabic that she met a client in a bar who offered her 900 euros for the night. This was too much money, considering that the rate per night was from 100 to 200 euros. It should be noted here that, unlike Christina and Irina, Zineb met clients in bars. A raid was conducted on the bars that the missing woman usually visited. In one of the bars, Samirala Hidar reported that she saw Zineb in the bar the day before her disappearance. The missing woman also bragged to her that she met a wealthy client and was supposed to spend the whole night with him. The investigators had no doubts. A maniac who kidnaps and kills prostitutes of foreign origin is rampant in Marseille. Investigators have established another interesting fact. The criminal continued to use the SIM cards of the kidnapped girls' phones for his own purposes. Thus, several phone calls from Irina and Christina's numbers were recorded. On November 11th, an event occurred that radically affected the course of the investigation. Sumia El-Khandadi, a prostitute of Moroccan origin, came to the police station. Her appearance at the police station was due to the fact that a rumor about a maniac and his preference for kidnapping foreign girls was actively spreading among representatives of the oldest profession. Sumia said that at the beginning of October, a man met her. He offered her to spend the night together for a large reward. She agreed. On the night of October 5th to 6th, he picked her up in a car at a pre-arranged location and drove her to his home. The road to the house took about an hour. Sumia had poor orientation. The road signs meant nothing to her because she couldn't read French, and she spoke French very poorly. The client was very polite to her right up until the moment they crossed the threshold of the apartment. The interior of the apartment was very ascetic. Of the furniture, she noticed only a kitchen table and chairs. There was a mattress on the floor. It felt like the apartment was uninhabited, a kind of place for dates. Then a real nightmare awaited her. The man began to shout and swear. He ordered her to undress, then undress him. The woman undressed him, after which he pushed Sumia onto the mattress with all his might. He pounced on her like an animal on its prey, tying her hands and feet, beat her, then raped her. During the act, he constantly humiliated and insulted her. This clearly excited him. Having finished torturing her, he noticed earrings in her ears, ordered her to take them off and give them to him. He threatened that if she did not obey, he would cut off her ears. Sumia quickly gave him the earrings. She thought that the worst was already behind her. But no. The monster took Sumia to the bathroom. Here she experienced a real shock. In the bathroom lay the naked body of a young woman. The body was lying face down. Then the sadist said the phrase, "If you are smart, you will avoid the same fate." Sumia realized that she would be able to survive only in one case. She needed to be absolutely docile while she was in the monster's lair. She had to use all his sexual experience so that the maniac would be satisfied. The criminal's further actions looked very strange. In the morning, he took Sumia home. Before letting the woman go, the criminal warned her that if she told anyone about what happened, he knew where to find her. Sumia El-Khandadi could not come to her senses for a long time after that night. She was afraid to contact the police, but realizing that women were disappearing one after another, she still decided to tell about what happened. Investigators noted that the episode with Sumia occurred immediately after the disappearance of Irina Sitnik. Most likely, the woman saw Irina's body. The next day, after talking with the Moroccan prostitute, investigators detained two local residents, Sarah and Saif. They were found to be in possession of phones that had previously belonged to Irina Sitnik and Kristina Boklea. The detainees reported that a man had sold them the phones on the street for 10 euros. The description of the phone seller's appearance matched the description given by Sumia the day before. He looked like a tall man, about 45 to 50 years old. His distinctive features included glasses. Investigators made a composite sketch of the suspect. It is noteworthy that one of the detainees, Saif, said that he had seen the seller on the streets of Marseille earlier. The detainees, Sarah and Saif, were released. 3 days later, the investigation team had a real stroke of luck. Saif, who had been released, called investigators and reported that he had seen the phone seller and had tracked down where he lived. On November 15, 2008, Patrick Salami was detained in his apartment. During the arrest, the officers noted the similarity of the composite sketch with the man they had been looking for the past 2 months. He was 51 years old at the time of his arrest. Patrick Salami was born in April 1957 in Fréjus. He was born into a large family of Lebanese-Syrian origin, consisting of 9 brothers and sisters. When Patrick was a child, the Salami family moved to Marseille. In the early 80s, he worked as a manager at the Rock Opera Burger restaurant. In 1983, he got married and became a father of 2 children. By that time, he already owned his own small cafe, but by mid-1988, his business was in decline. Salome himself began to steal with his friends. They broke into the homes of wealthy Marseille residents. There were 5 episodes in total. Moreover, if in the first 2 cases these were burglaries, then the next 3 were classified as robberies. On December 9, 1988, during the 3rd armed attack, the owner of the house was brutally beaten. Salome forced the owner of the house to suck his index finger, then grabbed her breast. In early March 1989, Patrick Salome and his accomplices were arrested and imprisoned. On the night of July 26 to 27, 1990, Patrick Salami attempted to escape from the pretrial detention center. Having bribed the guards, he tried to climb over the wall with a climbing rope, but the escape was unsuccessful. While climbing the rope, he fell from a height and broke his leg. In November 1990, he made another attempt to escape, and again, the attempt was unsuccessful. On May 15, 1993, Patrick Salami was sentenced to 20 years in prison. In July 2005, he was released from prison. At the time of his arrest, Patrick was calm. Investigators conducted a search in his apartment. Let us recall that Sumia, who was released by the criminal, noted that there was practically no furniture in the apartment where she was raped. Patrick's apartment, on the contrary, was well furnished. The attention of the investigators was also drawn to the paintings on the walls. The paintings were painted by Patrick himself. On your screens, you can see in what images the women are written. During the search, the investigators failed to find any evidence confirming the involvement of the apartment owner in the kidnappings. However, in the desk drawer, the investigators found a plan of the building that belonged to his mother. Part of the investigation team went to the address indicated on the plan. Upon arrival, they realized that Sumia had described this very building. The multi-story building was surrounded by a fence. The courtyard could only be reached by passing a round gate. A fire escape was visible from the end of the building. It was along this ladder, according to Sumia, that Patrick led her into the apartment located on the top floor. The investigators hoped to find the bodies of the missing people in the apartment, but upon entering, they realized that their expectations had not been met. However, during the search, items were found that indirectly indicated the involvement of the apartment owner in the kidnapping of the women. A large quantity of condoms were found in the apartment, as well as women's panties and jewelry, including a bracelet matching the description of the bracelet worn by Fatima Saya, the first missing girl. Among other items, a pearl was found on the floor of the apartment. It will later be established that the pearl fell out from behind a necklace that belonged to Irina Sitnik. The next day, November 13th, the suspect was interrogated for the first time. Patrick was told the reason for his detention. The detainee claimed that he was not acquainted with Rina Sitnik, nor with Christina Buclea, nor with Soumaya El-Kandadi. He is a married man, raising 2 boys. Moreover, he is not involved in Fatima's disappearance. Soumaya El-Kandadi was called to the identification procedure of Patrick Salami. She immediately identified him as the rapist, but after the identification procedure, Patrick continued to deny his involvement in the crimes. On November 14th, the results of the DNA examination were ready, according to which the found pink women's panties belonged to the missing Zinep Chibut. The only victim whose presence in the apartment was in question was the Romanian Christina Buclea. To more convincingly prove the guilt of the detainee, Susie Gill was invited to identify him. Let us recall that Patrick asked her to call 4 nannies from a payphone according to ads. Before the identification procedure began, the investigators decided to play it safe. They had a verbal description of the appearance of the so-called father, who was desperately looking for a nanny for his child. According to the description, a similar shirt, pants, and sneakers were purchased, as well as similar glasses. Patrick was asked to put on the purchased items before the identification. In this guise, Susie Gilles immediately recognized him. On November 15th, information about the capture of the maniac was published in the press and in television news broadcasts. It is noteworthy that many Marseille residents only learned from the news that a maniac had been operating in their city all this time. The investigation collected a wide list of material evidence pointing to the guilt of the suspect. However, this list was missing the main point: an answer to the question of the location of the missing persons' bodies. It was decided to investigate the estate belonging to the Salami family. It was located in the VAR department in the southeast of France. More than 30 police officers, as well as dog handlers with dogs, were involved in the search for the bodies. Ground-penetrating radars were used to analyze the soil during the search. The water channel running next to the estate was examined by divers. A helicopter was sent into the air to examine the territory adjacent to the estate. A full-scale search yielded no results. Not a single lead. The bodies of the missing were never found. As you know, Marseille is a port city, the coast of which is washed by the Gulf of Lion. Investigators suggested that Patrick threw the bodies into the waters of the bay. At the end of 2008, in the apartment where Soumaya was raped, a single blood stain was found during a detailed examination. DNA testing confirmed that the blood belonged to Christina Buclea. Thus, the investigation had evidence of the presence of Fatima, Irina Sitnik, Christina Buclea, and Zinep Chibut in the apartment. Under pressure from the evidence, Salami admitted that the women were indeed in his apartment. He used the services of prostitutes. He and Fatima had consensual sex. He knows nothing about the whereabouts of the missing. The first trial of Patrick Salami began on March 17, 2014. It is worth noting that the defendant's interests were represented by an experienced lawyer. He made the jury doubt the sincerity of Soumaya El-Kandadi's words. The lawyer insisted on the following: if the defendant, according to the investigation, so diligently covered his tracks, asked third parties to call potential victims from a payphone, changed his image for a meeting in a bar with Susie Gilles, then why, after the brutal abuse of Soumaya, did he let her go, and before letting her go, showed her the corpse in the bathroom? The lawyer convinced the jury of the prostitute's insanity. Soumaya was sent for a psychiatric examination by the court. The expert's conclusion was unambiguous. Soumaya was absolutely sane. In addition, a polygraph test showed that the woman was telling the truth. During the trial, a psychological portrait of the defendant was compiled. Patrick, according to his wife, was a quiet, calm person. She called him an exemplary husband. The woman thought so even despite the episode of sexual harassment during the attack in 1988. Patrick was a good father. According to the psychologist, he skillfully hid his true face and controlled himself. Sexual relations with his wife did not bring him the pleasure he wanted to receive. Therefore, the man looked for affairs on the side, trying to give free rein to his emotions in new sexual relations. Probably, Patrick switched to relations with representatives of the oldest profession after the murder of the student for a completely logical reason. It was much easier to come to an agreement with such women, without any intermediaries. On April 3, 2014, Patrick Salami was sentenced to life imprisonment with the right to parole after 22 years. He was found guilty of kidnapping people, followed by death. In a separate trial, he was convicted of kidnapping and murdering student Fatima Say and raping Sumia El-Khandadi. In conclusion, I would like to note a few more facts. In addition to his passion for painting, the criminal tried to write a book about serial crimes. A manuscript was found in his house. He sent his manuscript to book publishers several times, but was rejected each time. The manuscript clearly shows the author's attitude towards women, whom he considered the spawn of the devil. At the time of publication of the video, Patrick is in prison. He is 66 years old